What if the rookie became a Spartan-IV? Hi everyone. This story will split off during the events of Halo New Blood. Halo New Blood is a novel written by Matt Forbach, which covers the dispersal of ODST squad known as Alpha 9. It also contains major plot points and storylines that directly affect certain characters of Alpha 9, as well as explaining how Sergeant Gunnery Buck became a Spartan-IV. If you are curious to what actually happens to the ODST squad after the events of Halo 3 ODST, then I'd recommend picking up a copy and reading it. My story may give some hints as to what happens to the characters and cause the Halo New Blood novel to be slightly spoiled for you, as well as spoiling the Halo novel Bad Blood too. However, for a quick summary, the ODST squad Alpha 9 find themselves in a hostage situation with an insurrectionist leader known as Ingridson. The rookie is that hostage. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Alpha 9, go! Buck dives to his left and jamming his helmet back onto his head as he hits the ground. Ingridson started to empty her pistol at Buck, one of the bullets catching him in his arm. The impact was like getting kicked by a brute, Buck thinks to himself. Clear! Dutch shouts over the comms while the bullets are still flying. An instant later, an explosion on the doors leading up to the balcony interrupted Ingridson's furious barrage. We're hot, Palmer! Buck shouts through gritted teeth into the comms. Cover our backs? Already engaging the enemy front troops, she states calmly. Buck leaps back to his feet, unslinging his M7 SMG. Mickey begins moving up the stairs towards the balcony. He reaches the top and lines his rifle up to Ingridson. Hold it right there! The insurrectionist leader already had her gun pointed back at the rookie's head. Before Ingridson could pull a trigger, a high-velocity round rips through the air and pushes its way through the insurrectionist's skull. Her body falls back, her brains scattered across the wall behind her. Her weight slumps to the ground. An ODST with a blue chest plate, sniper rifle in hand, breathes a sigh of relief. The rookie took that as a signal to pick up his weapon and fire shots at the two insurrectionists coming up the other side of the balcony. Mickey also snaps his attention towards the rookie's sights and also engages the rebels, firing his rifle into their chests. Their bodies fell before they could even point their guns towards the two helljumpers. Dutch falls in behind Mickey, shotgun at the ready. He notices the now clear balcony and relaxes slightly. That could have been a whole lot messier. Buck rushes up the stairs carrying his shoulder in hand past Dutch. Thank God, he says in relief. Nice shooting, Romeo. The beaten rookie picks his helmet up off of the ground and slides it over his bloody face. Palmer, we're clear. Draco 3. A half-glass tropical planet that was once filled with life, now in a slum state. Although the planet had its scars, it was slowly being rebuilt by what residents remained, and that number was very few. A run-down bar called Leeward's was still up and running. Trying to make business on a war-torn planet couldn't be easy. A car pulls up outside of the bar and drives into the parking lot. Lots of empty spaces for the four-wheeler to take. The occupant of the vehicle drove into a space and exited the vehicle. A tired-looking middle-aged man dressed in the thin summer clothes walks across the car lot towards the entrance of the bar. He puts a hand on the door and pushes his way inside. Buck looks around the bar, reminiscing the old memories he once had here before he was even of age to drink. He smirks slightly and sits at the stool next to the bar. After a few rough drinks of imported beer, he notices a man in a black business suit with a face tattoo walking into the bar, his head nearly scraping the doorframe. Buck simply looks away from the man's direction and back at the drink resting on the bar, both hands around the bottle. The large-sized man sits on the stool next to him and faces Buck, waiting for a witty comment from the tired soldier. "I'm surprised that stool hasn't broke," Buck comments. The retired Spartan gives a half smirk. He expected the comment. Buck looks at him. "What are you here for? Come to join me on my week off? Sorry to disappoint, but I'm taken, Princess." June looks over to the half-empty bottle and then back to Buck. He signals the bartender for another bottle. "I have an offer." Buck lifts one eyebrow at the sentence as another bottle is placed next to him. "The last time you gave me an offer, I told you the answer was no." Buck picks up the new beer and takes a swig. June replies. "It's not the same offer," June says, correcting Buck. "We're making another class of Spartan-IVs, a bigger class, and we want you and the rest of Alpha 9 in it." Buck put his bottle back down. He flashes back to a week ago when they had been in recent conflict with a group of insurrectionists. He stares off towards the bottles that line the bar's shelves. "That idea is the last thing on my mind right now." June frowns slightly in disappointment. "Your team are exceptional soldiers, and the UNSC can't afford to lose them." June waits for a second in anticipation for a reply and then continues. "You'll be protecting your squad, Sergeant. You'll be doing everything you do now, only with more training and incredible body augmentations." Buck continues staring glassy-eyed at the bottles as last week's events flash through his mind. The rookie was dangerously close to losing his life that day. If it hadn't been for Romeo planted on that ridge out of sight, he would have no doubt lost his life that day. He looks down at his bottle and winces as he pictures the rookie's brains being painted across the balcony. Buck looks back towards June, staring at his face tattoo of a fist that clenched 3 arrows. "But Spartans ain't invincible." June frowns slightly. "No, they're not." They both stare at each other for a moment, and both recollect their time on Reach, Buck remembering the assistance of a Spartan B312 that helped him escape New Alexandria. If it wasn't for June and another Spartan, Noble 6 wouldn't have helped him from escaping the city. June also in a daydream, remembering watching his fellow Spartan being shot in the head by a needle rifle. "Your team fell apart too, didn't they?" June nods his head. "But if it wasn't for them, you and I probably wouldn't be here right now." Buck slumps in his stool and takes a swig of the beer in front of him. He wondered how Veronica would react if he went through with the Spartan-IV program. "All of us?" Buck asks. June replies, "Well, your friend Dutch has already filled out the paperwork for a transfer to retire, but apart from him, yes." Buck thinks for a moment about the real reason why Dutch was retiring. He knew the risks, but when one of us came that close to taking a slug in the head, he decided that he'd like to spend the rest of his time with his wife, Gretchen, who was also a retired ODST. Buck didn't blame him. Even he had thought about settling down with Veronica someday, perhaps building a ranch on Mars and having a couple of kids of his own. But he knew that Veronica would not give up her life with Ona. It was too important to her. Her life was dedicated to making others a better life. Buck looks back to the suit-wearing Spartan. To Dutch. He raises his drink in a toast. June, in return, grabs one of Buck's empty bottles and returns the toast, clanging the bottles. "So, is that a yes?" Buck finishes his drink and plants his bottle back into the bar. Maybe. June simply smirks. Well, it's an improvement from no. Chapter 2. January 3rd, 2560. I hit down to the ring pretty hard. My pod slammed into the side of a mountain and slid all the way down to the bottom, hitting every little rock that stuck out from the jagged terrain. It was a miracle how my Spartan-sized coffin didn't combust into flames from the friction of it all. I've been on plenty of drops in the past, too many to count an exact number, but more than the average ODST by now, that's for sure. When I finally grinded to a halt at the bottom of the mountain, I hit the door's deployment button. With a quick hiss, the door quickly bursts itself off of the drop pod. I've never been on a Halo before, but when I got my first look at the beautiful blue sky and the long green grass, I could have sworn I was on Earth. It's almost as if the ring's surface was a copy of the planet, in fact. It felt eerily comforting. I stepped out with my sidearm pointed at the ready for any unfriendly life form to stare down my barrel, but to my relief, nothing was waiting for me. I gave another look around my surroundings, taking in the beautiful sights of a blue sky that followed the ring's surface north of my position. As I followed the installation's surface, I realized that my head was craning upwards, following the shape to eventually see a mix of brilliant sunny blue sky as well as a starry night sky in between the clean puffy white clouds. It was a sight to behold for sure. I thought of how Veronica would love such an incredible sight. Veronica. I looked down to the ground I was stood upon and holstered my M6C pistol. What happened up there was a complete mess, and we lost a lot of people. There was still debris falling to the Halo. The Infinity took some serious damage, and there was a lot of people aboard. Too many names I knew personally. I could only hope they escaped in time. Luckily, for me and the rest of Alpha 9, we was just getting into our Spartan pods to drop down for an assault against the Banished before the cataclysm happened. The Banished were a lot like the Covenant from what I heard, only instead of following a prophet or a crazed elite, this time it was run by a brute chieftain named Atriox. I didn't care what they called themselves. If you ask me, it was just the Covenant 2.0 from my understanding. I started walking through a field of luscious long grass and started to flick through the comm channels, looking for any others that may have survived when we dropped. There were a few that seemed to be lit up, Marines communicating to each other as they either came down or was down. By the sounds of it, a lot of Pelicans had managed to make their way down relatively safely, but not unscathed. I flicked back over to the Alpha 9 channel and tried to contact the rest. This is Spartan Book. Alpha 9, do you read? Is anyone out there? Silence followed my desperate questions. Rookie, you around? Respond, that's an order. I waited a few seconds in silence once again, before getting a static-filled reply from a coughing Spartan Dutch. Gunny, you in one piece? I replied quickly with excitement. Dutch, I'm fine, you okay? Any trouble on your end? A gruff voice replied. Yeah, I think so. Hit some weird structure pretty hard though. Seems to be clear from where I'm sat. I was relieved to hear that I wasn't the only one from Alpha 9 that made it down in one piece. Ping me your waypoint, Dutch. I'll rendezvous with you. A bright yellow marker lit up the compass on my HUD, blinking to gain its attention. I see you. On my way now. Hey, you heard anything from anyone else, Gretchen? As I started a steady pace through the fields west towards Dutch's position, I wondered what condition she was in. On our way down, I remember seeing Romeo's pod bash into hers on the way down. I suppose I should be worried about him too, but that smart-mouthed pain in my arse always was lucky when it came to death-defying odds. No, nothing. What about you? Any other pings? I feel like I heard Dutch frown as he gave me a reply. No, not a squeak. Just sit tight for now. Secure the area while you wait. I shouldn't be too long. I ran through valleys and rivers, seeing no signs of any other UNSC personnel for some time. Nothing but alien-looking wildlife that also looked somehow familiar. One of the species I saw was what looked to be a pack of deer, the kind you'd normally see on Earth, but different. I didn't have time to analyse the wildlife though, as I noticed smoke rising between what looked like a dense forest to the south. I weighed the options for a second, as well as the chances of that being another orbital drop pod. The source of the smoke wasn't too far off of my path towards Spartan Dutch, so I decided to make my through there in a quick pace, searching for any signs of a gouged out ground from a drop pod's impact. It took me a while before I looked up to try and find the smoke once more. I was sure I was in the correct place when I saw it. There was a drop pod alright. It had been caught by the surrounding trees, as if saved from the ground by an omnipotent force. Just by looking, it was hard to tell who was in there. I checked the HUD's motion tracker and selected the yellow ping 20 meters above me. From doing this, it allowed me to see who was occupying the hanging coffin. As I read the name, I smiled. Looks like we've caught him napping this time. Dutch replied, sounding puzzled over the comms. Say again, Gunny? I chuckled in disbelief. I cannot believe he's out cold again. The rookie. He's out cold in his pod, suspended in the air by some very thick-looking trees. Dutch gave me a sigh of relief and replied, Thank God he ain't dead. How are you going to get him out of there? I raised an eyebrow and placed my hand on the lower half of my helmet. Not sure. Probably easier to just try wake him up so he can pop the door off himself. I looked down at my sidearm and placed my right hand on it. Dutch, in curiosity, asks, How exactly do you manage on doing that? I fired my pistol at the drop pod, creating a booming echo of sound waves that echo through the dense forest. A flock of birds native to the ring seemed to fly out from the other surrounding trees close by. Gunny, I heard shots. You found contact? I once again placed my weapon back onto my armor's leg plate. The gun magnetically locked itself into place. Just waking up Sleeping Beauty, I said with a chuckle. The rookie's vitals seemed to have picked up and his heartbeat had now slightly increased. He was most definitely awake now. Hey rookie, get your ass down here. We gotta make tracks. I shouted over the comms. Keeping an eye on the Spartan's vitals, I noticed that they had relaxed as swiftly as they raised. He definitely knows I'm here now. He up and running? Dutch asked. I think so. As the words left my mouth, a hiss of air escaped the pod above me and the door blasted itself off its scarred frame, slinging its way in between the trees directly in front of it. Not a second after the door popped off, a Spartan fell to the ground and landing comfortably on its armoured feet. Buck looked at the Spartan, now stood in front of him, an M7 caseless suppressed SMG in hand. His armour was a lot like Buck's, with only minor differences. A white stripe along the top of the helmet, a silver visor, and two small pouches on both armoured legs containing extra medical supplies for UNSC personnel. Buck smiles behind his green visor. Enjoy your nap, Spartan? Oh, well, what do you all think of the new series? I checked the poll, and it looks like you all voted for what if Rookie would be a Spartan-IV, so here it is. A lot of the context will actually be from Halo New Blood and Halo Bad Blood, so I am sorry if I've spoiled some of that, but I have put a spoiler warning at the beginning. Hopefully. Anyway. I've also decided to start trying to make these videos a lot more consistently by trying to get 2 episodes out a week now. I have just finished recording chapter 1 and 2 of this story, and I am about to record chapter 3. Once I do that, I will then edit it all, have chapter 1 and 2 in one video up and ready, which will be this video, and then chapter 3 will be, I'm hoping, Wednesday. So this video will come out Sunday, so in around 3 or 4 days, roughly. So stay tuned, and please don't go away. I love you all. Alright, I'm gonna go. Bye.